Alrighty, welcome to the Sarcasm and Liberty live stream. This is our Tuesday stream. Tonight we are talking about South Park politics. I think a lot of what we'll probably end up just talking about tonight is some of our favorite episodes and stuff, but we're going to try to tie it into a lot of the libertarian philosophy and stuff like that, which anybody who's watched South Park should know by now that it's got a lot of libertarian philosophy behind it. Real quick, we are joined by somebody who hasn't been on our streams before, which is the annoyed monarchist Otter. So, Mike, and from now on, like I said, I'm just going to call you Otter just to avoid confusion. If you want to give us a quick introduction of who you are, and if you got anything online that you want to plug real quick, go ahead.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Glad to be here. Nice to join you guys. Finally been watching for a while. So let's see. Not really sure what to say. If you want to find me on Twitter, annoyed_Otter, and I'm attempting a fledgling video page on YouTube and BitChute that is annoyed minarchist Otter, all one word on both of those, and alternative platform is the same, and mine's is the same as Twitter, annoyed_Otter.
Otter, you said you had a YouTube going?
Yes. I've made 2 videos. One's an intro, and one's about that Alex Jones deplatforming. It's just me rambling. Anyway, I'm still trying to figure out exactly what I'm doing with it, and I don't know how to make it a good product yet. So it's still kind of
it takes some time.
Feeling around.
What's the title of your YouTube? Is it the same as your Twitter, or? Yeah,
annoyed minarchist Otter, all one word. Same as on
YouTube. Yeah. All right, check him out, guys. This is our first time we've gotten him on the stream, but we've been talking to him on Twitter for a while. He's a really cool guy. I'm really happy to have him on here finally. So definitely check out all the stuff. Check him out on Twitter and his YouTube channel. I'm sure he'll have some more stuff up sometime. Everybody else on here, people should recognize as regulars. I'm going to turn it over to Michael real quick, who is one of our team members for Sarcasm Liberty. He helps create our memes and such. So, Michael, if you got anything you want to plug, or just to give a quick introduction for yourself.
Well, there ain't much to plug except for that page, Sarcasm and Liberty. That's where you see a lot of my content if I do present anything. So give Sarcasm and Liberty a follow. Obviously, you do because you're watching this YouTube. You'll know me on Twitter as @SleazyWee. Don't ask about the name; it was a long time ago. That's about it. Let's get on with it.
Yeah, Madness is a regular on our streams. Madness, you want to give a quick introduction or anything?
I'm Madness. I live in the EU. That's absolute fucking trash here, and I'm currently in Twitter jail because some commies could not handle facts.
Yep, I know that feeling. Amos, I want you to plug your YouTube too, real quick. Give us a quick introduction.
Right. My name is Amos Joseph. I am one of the co-hosts of the weekly show for Shitlord Preachers. My channel is over at Amos Joseph. You'll see 2 of them, but it's the one with all the videos. Follow me at Amos Joe on Twitter, and check out the stream weekly. So
yeah, definitely. I've been on his show before too, actually, and him and Brooke run a good show. It's definitely worth checking out. I had a lot of fun, and I've had a lot of fun with Amos. And then Brooke has occasionally joined our stream too. So they're good guys. Definitely check them out. All right, so let's just jump right into it. I will say for myself, I've actually been rewatching a lot of South Park episodes lately. I've not watched, I think, the most recent 2 or 3 seasons. I'm losing track of where they're at right now because they've been going on so much longer than what they thought they were. But I don't know. I would say for me, I think it was like when they hit season 19, they started doing this. They changed their formula where they started
serialized instead of like.
Yes, exactly, precisely. They started doing out like each season had a contained story, like a lot of like
the
drama
last
shows and
season
stuff.
they want to get rid of that idea because it doesn't work on how they operate. Although they did not completely get rid of it.
Yeah, I haven't checked out the last season.
They introduced a bunch of new characters too, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that they're willing to change it up, and like the whole like serialized thing or like a contained story, and even the seasons carried on. I thought that was really interesting. It made each one of those seasons seem very like it was like any typical show you watch, where you can't just watch like one episode. You have to watch the whole season to understand. And since the seasons are short and it's a half-hour show, it's not like it takes up that much time of your life. But like their commentary on the 2016 election was just amazing. So fucking spot on. I was just recently watching that today, actually. I watched a couple episodes of that today where, and for those people who don't know, they had, instead of actually, like, because they were like, we don't want to give Donald Trump any attention whatsoever. So instead of having Donald Trump, they had Mr. Garrison basically being Donald Trump.
No,
he had like the orange.
Completely true.
This is what they did. This is what they did.
Prime Minister.
Let me finish my thought.
They
had Garrison doing like the orange face paint and all that stuff, and he looked like Donald Trump, and he was doing his like what do you call this stank face, which was just this like dorky stare that Trump would do. But they kept bringing up the point that basically like he was intentionally trying to lose the election, and he kept succeeding because Hillary was such a bad candidate. And they were like, you know, they were like the Hillary's advisors were coaching her before a debate, and they were like, no matter what he says, just say my opponent is a liar and he cannot be trusted. So then they go out there and Garrison's like, look, I'm terrible at this. I shouldn't be president. I don't want to be president. Vote for her instead. And all the advisors were like, oh, hey, this is going to be great for us. And then Hillary's like, my opponent is a liar and can't be trusted. It's like, oh, God. And then he's like, the whole time, he's just like, why did it have to be you? Like, why did it, like, you're such a turd sandwich. Why did it have to be you? Like, anybody else would have been able to beat me easily. And I feel like that commentary was so great because it's like, you have like one of the worst candidates in history, and the only reason he was able to actually become president is because he was against the other worst candidate in history. And it was like she was just her own worst enemy the whole time.
Yeah, it was a giant douche, right?
Yeah. Giant douche versus turd sandwich. That's been their thing.
That is what an old stick from earlier. There was only a mistake what they made. According to Stan's father, he stated that he previously voted for the douche always, aka the Republicans. The problem is, in the previous elections, he voted for Obama, but is a Democrat.
No, well, here's the thing.
That was a mistake.
One of the things I've noticed, and they flat out said, the creators of South Park just don't give a fuck about continuity. They've actually, I don't remember the episode, but there was an episode where there was two like police officers talking, and their voices actually switched a couple times during the conversation, and like they said they noticed that during editing, and they were just like, we don't care. Like, who fucking cares?
Well, they give order about continuity because of course Chef is removed. When the serializing started, they paid more attention to continuity.
That brings up a good point I want to talk about. And I think this would be a good place to just jump in right now and hear everybody saying, part of South Park's policy, Trey Parker and Matt Stone, they have it's either it's all okay or none of it's okay when it comes to making fun of stuff. Which is why they're making fun of Scientology became such a big deal for people, and why Isaac Hayes left, and because they were like, look, I understand that, you know, you believe all this stuff, but here's the thing, it's like we can't censor our show for this one thing because that means that we're giving them,
why he left.
That means we're giving them special treatment.
I didn't know that's why he left.
Yeah, that's why he left. Is because they did the trap in the closet. Hold on. they did a Trapped in a Closet episode and hardcore made fun of Scientology. And Isaac Hayes was like, well, I don't think that's cool. And they're like, okay, well, you were all right when we were making fun of Mormons, when we were making fun of Christians, when we were making fun of Jews and Muslims. You've been okay when we made fun of everybody else, but just because you subscribe to this particular religion or this particular church, now you have a problem with it. I'm like, and they were like, we're sorry, but we cannot pick and choose what we think is okay to make fun of and what's not in our minds. Yeah. Either it's all okay or none of it's okay. And Isaac Hayes left. And then we're like, we're sorry about that.
Yeah,
you kind of got to be able to
force to leave.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're going to have a policy where everyone agrees that we're going to set this comedy grenade in the center of the room, you can't complain whenever you catch a little shrapnel.
Yep. And I feel like that was a big thing. A great point, Auger. You know, that's been the whole time. It's like, look, we're going to make fun of everything. Everything. They've even made fun of atheists. They've gone as far as to make fun of agnostics. And I have agnostic friends that were pissed off at that episode. And I'm like, why were you okay when they were making fun of atheists and when they were making fun of Christians? It was like their episode making fun of agnostics was like,
beverage.
Yes, the Dr. Pepper, the agnostic beverage. It's not root beer or Coke. Nobody knows what it is.
Nobody knows what it is.
One thing they can no longer joke about. Those episodes are even removed from television. It's every episode make fun of the fucking prophet from the Islam.
Well, no, okay. Here, it wasn't a factor they couldn't. They did, but they got censored by the network. But they still went through their plans to actually make the joke.
Yeah, the 201 episode were about that, but in the 201, they had to change a bit of the plot because he no longer could be in a costume, despite of originally he was planned to be. They had to change the plot of that episode. The joke was still there, but the plot is a bit changed.
It's just kind of like how they originally pulled that. I didn't even see the movie, but there was a movie where they the Rogan guy like goes and kills Kim Jong-un or something.
Mm-hmm.
They pulled that originally, and then they made a big fuss about it, and then they reinstated
What, are you talking about Team America or?
No, it was
Team America was good.
That was
Team America was good. That was actually a Trey Parker, Matt Stone creation. I was just referencing another thing that they had like a big.
Funny
big
show.
On. I forget the guy's name, but it's the guys that are always into stoner flicks now, and they go and kill Kim Jong-un or something.
Oh no, I know what you're talking about. It was like the Judd Apatow crew, like Seth Rogen and what's his fuck?
James Franco.
James Franco, thank you.
He played in the Sam Raimi Spider-Mans.
The Interview. Thank you, Set Theory from the chat. The Interview was the name of the movie. Yeah, that was actually censored. A lot of people think that was actually like a publicity stunt too, but who knows? Yeah. Who knows? But here's the thing: like that's one of the things I love about South Park is that they're not afraid to make fun of things. Some of the things they've made fun of, like even when it's things I disagree with, I find myself laughing. I'm like, oh, this is hilarious. Like, yeah, I don't necessarily agree with you on this, but you're making fun of it in a way that it's perfectly fine to laugh about and find enjoyment about.
Yeah, and you got to be able to laugh at yourself a little bit, like
exactly.
If they did an episode completely making fun of like libertarians, I'd probably laugh my ass off the whole episode.
And I'm sure they've actually done that, like hidden in there somewhere. What's that?
I was just saying it's a comedy-rich environment. They should.
I think. Go ahead.
If there is one episode where they do make fun of libertarians, but it's kind of on how you look at it, the Underpants Gnomes one, where the Underpants just collect the underwear, and it's like, oh well, we're geniuses at corporation. That's kind of like, the common libertarian thing where it's like, a lot of them think that they're good at business just because they're a libertarian. It's like, well, we collect the underpants, then question mark, then profit.
Right. Well, I think that's a good point. It's poking fun at I would say small time capitalists that don't really quite understand the system. They're just assume that we start our business and then we'll profit off of it. They actually, I would say their later times when they did their Kickstarter for their startup company, that they specifically said was like, it was that we don't want to work, we just want to make money. That's kind of a throwback to that. There's a lot of people who are, you know, like that's what they think capitalism is that like you just make money and you don't have to do anything. I was like, that's not really what capitalism is. Real quick, Michael, you got a shout out from Set Theory. So in the chat.
Oh, what's up?
Just saying that.
Yeah, that's my buddy Scott.
Well, I appreciate him joining the stream.
They even made dual episodes about autism.
They did a lot. They've done a lot. They've actually touched on mental health a lot.
Yeah.
One of the things I love.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
You just mentioned Scott, and he mentioned autism. I think it's a sign.
I have autism. That's why.
Sorry, I had to make fun of him live on YouTube real quick.
No, but like one of the things I like that they've actually said was like a very positive thing, and I always see it as positives. They have characters like Jimmy, who well, there's Jimmy and there's Timmy, but they have disabilities. But every kid, like even while they use the word retarded and stuff like that, they treat them like everyone else. They don't see them as a kid with disabilities. They just see them as another kid.
Token. Where Token no longer feels
appreciated. The one,
and then at the end of the episode, it's like, yeah, we make fun of each other because, like, with Carl's a Jew and even Jewish mom and bullshit like that. And in the end, they kind of just keep making fun of Carl and he's fat and horse mother, and his father is left him.
Here's the thing, like it always throws me back to my days in the military. And when I was in the military, we would make fun of each other based off of like ethnicity and stuff, and people would be like, oh my god, that's fucking terrible. Like for me, I have some Native American ancestry, so like my friends like literally trying to find something to latch onto would call me Native. Then we had my roommate who was Irish, we called him Mick. One of our friends, he was like really black, you know, and like one of the things I would say, like I remember one morning it was really dark and he was walking up and I was like, hey, smile, man, I can't see you, you know, and that was the joke. And people would be like, that's fucking terrible, but he would laugh his ass off, you know. I was like, it's just what like people, when you're really close, you don't mind stuff like that. If you're not actually bebeing racist, you're just poking fun at stereotypes and stuff.
And our stream just got taken down.
wait.
And that's how me and my
I'm kidding, by the way.
It's hard to tell these days. Like, I was in the military, but just in...
Somebody was saying something. Michael?
Yeah, that was me.
All right, go ahead.
Just in my neighborhood, like you were saying, like when you're close friends and you're comfortable, like, you know, we used to call like, you know, our black friend Black Will. And like a couple of years later, he'd say like, "Oh, like, fuck you guys. You used to always call me Black Will." It's like, listen, motherfucker. If you weren't black, you'd have a lot worse of a nickname.
No, and that's kind of the sense I always get from South Park. It's a bunch of kids who are comfortable with themselves, comfortable with who everyone is around them, and they're willing to make fun of each other. Like, I mean, with the exception of somebody like Cartman, who does it actually out of hate. But they're willing to poke fun at each other, like, out of just pure fun. And that's one of the things I like about that. There's an innocence behind there. And that's what I like always want to explain to people is like, you know, any of those interactions they had with people in the military, it had nothing to do with their skin color or their ancestry. One of the examples that people always find horrible when I explain to it is we had a friend who was Polish, and he was not an American citizen. So once we got upgraded to like the ACUs that had the Velcro patches, we would rip the American flag patch off of him. Be like, you can't have this until you get your citizenship. And people would be like, that's fucking terrible. But he thought it was hilarious because like we weren't doing it to be mean-spirited. We were doing it to just be stupid and have fun and stuff like that. Like, we don't think of you any differently. He was one of our closest friends. It's like we don't look at you differently because of your, you know, you're Polish. It's because that you're Polish, that we're finding ways to mess with you just to be goofy. And that's one of the things that we see in South Park that I praise, is that they do that kind of stuff.
But South Park is on right now here on TV.
I'm sorry, what?
And South Park is on TV right here, right now.
Oh, nice. And,
it is the episode where it's about the war in Middle Eastern, where they're going to be like, we're pro-war, we're anti-war, and Carbon just goes back in time, so to speak, quote unquote.
All right. One of the things I want to do tonight is talk about people's like specific favorite episodes and why. So I threw this over to the chat, and the first episode we got was the Death Camp of Tolerance. I don't know if everybody remembers that one. That's one of my.
I remember it.
Oh, not by name.
Yeah, this is the one where Garrison was being like, he was desperately trying to be fired for being gay because he thought he would win a bunch of money in a lawsuit, and because he was being so like overtly sexual in the classroom, the kids were uncomfortable. So the school sent him to this camp of tolerance, which was basically like a fucking concentration camp.
It was even in black and white.
Yeah, it was in black and white too. So like it was just them trying to like beat this sense of like you have to be all inclusive into these kids as violently as possible.
Basically, how the PC people are was already back then. Put to South Park.
Okay, so now for those of you that do remember it, though, like for me, one of the things that always strikes me about that episode was how it was like there are some people who are so concerned about being PC and so concerned about being all-inclusive that they're willing to override their actual humanity in order to reach that point. That it doesn't matter how it makes anybody else feel. It matters about the end result. And that's what I always kind of found about that episode. So I would like to open it up to the panel and even the chat. If you guys have something you want to chime in on that specific episode, kind of what your interpretations were.
Yeah, that's it. If I'm not mistaken, that's the episode when they debuted the Mr. Slave character.
Yes, Mr. Slave. Yep.
And you know he
Lemmy-Winks.
Like you said, he's trying to get fired for being gay, and he's trying to be as overtly sexual as possible. So it's like it becomes he's bringing in this guy, and I'm not sure if this is a separate episode or not, but he shoves a gerbil up his ass. It's like, listen,
that's the same one, Lemmy-Winks.
Yeah, it's not wrong because he's gay. It's wrong because another person in here and shoving a fucking hamster up his ass. Like that's not okay, no matter what the sexuality.
Well, he did
but they were like it has to be accepted. Same guy from the chat, Set Theory says, he mentioned one of the things that I thought was funny is they go through this whole thing of like you have to be tolerant of other people and how they feel and like who they are and blah 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 blah. And then they go outside and there's this guy smoking. And they flip the fuck out on the smoker and kick him off the grounds. And he's like, I'm just smoking. Like, yeah, I've had a hard day. And they're like, you're fucking cancer person and all this shit. And it's kind of funny. Like, it's like, okay, like you will see that in the same thing when it comes to SJWs is there's a very selective, like whatever they approve of is protected. Things they don't approve of, they'll like consider worse than shit. And then that's okay for them to be intolerant of. It shows that kind of hypocrisy on that level.
Yeah, actually, it's a funny story about this little group that I'm in. They were talking about the recent person that got killed by the illegal alien, and all the liberals were saying like, oh, don't bring death into it, like stop using tragedy to push your agenda. So me being the asshole that I am, started opening up the gun debate talk, and all those same people that were, saying how terrible it was were using the same justification. So it's like, yeah, it's like whatever your sacred thing is, like that's like holy and good, and like you were saying with the smoker, it's like, oh, you have to be tolerant of everyone. Smoker, you're terrible. Get out of here.
Well, and that's
Cartman learned even a new couple names to name call people, even thanks to the museum.
It's the same thing that you'll see from Christianity. You know, it's like they preach love and acceptance and all this stuff, but then they turn around and they'll be absolutely horrible to people who don't fall in line with their beliefs. And that's where I do honestly feel like things like, and that's where I think like South Park does a good job of, because they poke fun of everything. They do a good job of, whether they intended to or not, they draw a very good parallel between like religion and things like social justice warriors, where it's like, oh, these guys are basically a cult, a religious cult that, you know, you have to accept the way we think, you have to accept the way that we feel. And if you don't, like, we'll preach love and acceptance and tolerance and all this stuff, but as long, like, the second you cross over that line, you're fucking out. Like, you're the worst person you can imagine. Like, and real quick, I'll bring up, before turning it back over, I'll bring up the, it was some video I watched with Blair White, where she was talking about where she used to be a social justice warrior, and she would be along to these groups. And part of the thing that made her start to slowly break away from that was that there was this constant judgmental attitude that
that was one of the things. When she started transitioning, that is either one of the big reasons why she was like, certain things that they keep yelling were not true.
Yeah. Well, like, the thing I remember is her talking about how, like, even before she transitioned, there was this always like, oh, you said this, you're not supposed to say that. Oh, you did this, you're not supposed to do this. You know, you're supposed to think this way.
What the fuck you have to say?
It's a cult mentality. And like, one of the things with the more recent episodes with like PC Principal and stuff on South Park.
You feel like
are you PC, bro?
Yeah.
PC, bro?
Yeah, are you PC, bro? It brings up that cult mentality. You have to think this way. And if you don't think this way, you're wrong. And we're going to slam you for it. And I think that's one of the things that South Park does so well with their satires. They show that, hey, you know, these people are having a cult-like mentality. That's not what freedom is. They're saying like these people are like safe spaces are important, and then it's like, no, reality is important. Learning to deal with reality and understand reality, and like be like, yeah, people aren't going to have the nicest things to say about you. Get the fuck over it, you know. I think they actually had a whole episode where they had the reality like embodied as a character, and at the end of the episode, they hung reality because it was like too offensive for people. Yeah, this is amazing.
One of the great things about that, show is that they can, anytime they have a commentary episode, all they need to do is boil it down to the appeals to emotion within whatever tribalist faction they want to make an episode about that, and they've got the episode written. Sometimes the greatest parody is reality itself.
Yeah.
I just want to. Oh, if I could make a quick comment.
Go ahead.
So since we were talking about like different groups kind of have their selective things, I just want all the viewers to know that us libertarians are the most accepting group, except for you fucking status. You have no libertarian party.
I'd like to interject and say I don't accept people who put pineapple on pizza.
Just saying, we accept everyone except for statists.
I still think you miss one big group, but hey.
But yeah, I wanted to say something on the PC Principal. I think the one thing that they did a really good job on is exposing the hypocrisy, because I remember there was one scene, I forget if it was Timmy or Jimmy. Jimmy comes in and he's like, you know, I'm handicapped, and he's like, you know, I don't think you understand how handicapped people really feel. It's like, dude, I'm handicapped. You're not. Fuck you.
Because it was in the magazine that Jimmy brings out, some of the people who voted in it, said the word retard, and that was wrong to use.
Well, no, that was a funny one, because I actually watched that one today where
with PC Principal said he was going to break
PC
their
Principal,
legs.
He was like, I'm going to break the legs of whoever said the word retard in the school paper.
No, it was
and then they're like, oh, Jimmy's the editor. And then like he looks at him, and then they're like, "Are you
No,
still
it was
his legs?"
no. Wasn't it the thing where he like basically Jimmy like wrote an article about how the PC fraternity was basically being PC so they could crush puss.
That was after it.
PC. The PC stands for Pussy Crushers. I watched that.
Yeah, they were like, "We're totally being victimized, bro."
They're like, "We're the victims now." I do feel like that's something like a lot of the PC crowd, like they're desperately in an attempt.
Well, that's what male feminists are.
Like, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, okay, let's.
The PC crowd in South Park are a lot stronger guys than actual male feminists.
Yes. Let's dive further into time to like I would say some of the earlier episodes of South Park. When we're talking about more of the standalone episodes and stuff like that. Is there anything you guys can think of, whether you're on the panel or you're in the chat? And I'm talking like season 3 to like 10. Anything you can think of that stands out, like, oh my god, this had such good commentary on it.
Yeah,
legal immigration
there's
episode.
a couple.
A couple of people jumped in real quick. What?
No, no one is. Well,
All right. Go ahead, Otter.
I was just going to say the illegal immigration episode when everyone's beaming in from the future.
It was
That's a good one.
the Goobacks.
Okay. Well, okay. Otter, hold on. Let's address the illegal immigration episode real quick. That's something I think was a good one because that's the one that spawned the whole like "you took your jobs" one. So look, that was an interesting one. It like kind of had a like. Here's something I like about a lot of South Park episodes. There's a two-pronged approach. There's the like criticism and there's the acceptance of an idea. There's like that episode both had like, okay, you're ridiculous for freaking out about immigrants coming to this country and stuff like that. But then there's also this idea of like, yeah, if they keep coming to this country and don't take care of their own country, it could cause problems. They have this pronged approach that really like it makes you think on both sides.
Well,
and that's what that episode always makes me think about.
You had Randy Marsh's job was replaced by what they call the Goobacks, but then the kids had a hard time ordering food at a fast food restaurant.
Yeah.
So chicken sandwich, and then he gets the manager chicken sandwich.
No, I want a goddamn cheeseburger. You goddamn Gooback.
He does that right when his parents walk in, doesn't he? I think. Yeah.
But it's good how they address sort of both sides of how ridiculous it is. Like,
they're good about that.
I'll quickly just touch on this. Not that we're going to talk about this episode, but there's the was it the Easter episode, the Da Vinci Code episode?
Oh yeah.
So on one hand, they're calling out that the church is just ridiculous. On the other hand, Jesus kicks ass. So
that guy's amazing.
It's kind of a two-sided thing. Like
how be still Jewish if you literally saw Jesus?
Well, it's just funny. Like Jesus kicks ass in the very end, but like they still like make fun of him. Like he makes Kyle kill him so he could resurrect outside the jail cell, and he's just bleeding everywhere.
Jewish again.
That's one of my favorite episodes because I've always found the Da Vinci Code to be like one of the most ridiculous books and movies I've ever had the displeasure of being
I love them.
reading. I just couldn't stand them. I thought they were so stupid.
Angels and Demons is a far worse movie.
But from the chat, like it just spawned one of the quotes that always comes to mind when I talk about the South Park creators, where it was Matt Stone who does the voice of like Kyle and Kenny, where he says, "I hate conservatives, but I really fucking hate liberals." And that's what always every time I see that quote, I'm like, yeah, these are my guys.
Well, actually, I was there was one interview where they were talking about how they were punk rockers before, and basically just rebel against whatever they're around. So they were very liberal at first, and then they moved to California, and they're like, well, the only way to be fucking atrocious here is to say like, oh, I love George Bush and I love guns. You know, they became Republicans.
Yeah.
So it's like, now actually, I think they just came out as Republicans and everyone went fucking nuts. And I guarantee it's just them saying, well, everyone hates Republicans now, so fuck you guys, we're Republicans.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. I think they're just very anti-establishment. They're just like, I don't fucking care. Yeah, they just want to piss people off. They're provocateurs. They're like, this is their job.
I don't know if it was the Oscars or some special place, but they went there in fucking dresses, and everybody's like, why the fuck don't you wear suits? Men's supposed to wear suits. Yeah, we don't give a fuck.
I'll admit I haven't read it, but I know there is a book out there that is about South Park and conservative politics, where it was written by conservatives where they drew from the show to talk about like politics within the show and stuff like that. Even like though the show will slam conservatives, they were still like, yeah, they make a lot of good points. This is very rational, very reasonable. I need to read that sometime. I think that would be a great read. One of the things that I'm going to read South Park and philosophy too, and that's mostly just because my wife is a philosopher and that kind of stuff interests me now. But there's a lot of good, like when you talk about South Park, you can see liberals and conservatives. You can see both sides of the aisle pulling points from this show and saying, hey, this makes sense to us, we like this. And then you have people like libertarians and centrists that are like, yeah, the entire thing makes sense to us because they're making fun of everybody. We're all stupid.
What I liked about the post-election episode was, on one hand, like, Mr. Garrison is just this, I mean, he's as, if not more ridiculous than Trump himself, but it's like, but here's the thing, like, they still capitalize on the fact that, like, everyone lost their fucking minds when Mr. Garrison won the election.
Yep.
People shooting themselves, going absolutely insane. I mean, not that I don't know if we ever saw that level where people killing themselves, but we definitely saw the insanity.
Yeah.
So
here's the thing, too. I'm willing to bet, too, because, like, for the 2012 election, where it was Obama and Romney, that's what I'm thinking of. They had an entire no. It was like even further than that. I think it was like 28.
Yeah. They did when Obama
they had two entire separate episodes ready to go. One for if Obama won, and one if McCain won.
Oh, the Trump episode. They had. I think it was like the morning after the election. They had to change the episode.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things like that's nice about South Park. And here's a good topic for us to kind of dwell on for a minute. One of the nice things about South Park is they literally develop each episode within a week.
Yeah.
So
they only missed once the airtime.
South Park, because of their ability to do that, because of their simplified graphics and all that stuff, they have an ability to touch on current topics that no other animated sitcom or even just regular sitcom could ever possibly do.
Anything.
And one of the biggest examples of that was the episode with where they had the Cirque du Soleil singers. They had like the quadruplets that were like dancing and stuff, and then Kenny was supposed to be a singer and all this other stuff. And they actually did this whole representation of the soldiers coming in and forcibly taking Kenny from his home. And the images from the episode directly reflected the like images from the Janet Reno event where they were Elian Gonzalez, I think I'm saying it right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was directly paralleled from that. And this was like days before, like days after this happened. Like it was a couple of days after this happened, and they completely revamped their whole episode. And that's when people started realizing, these people do their episodes within a whole week. It's not like any other cartoon. But it shows us like, hey, we can react within literally a week to just an episode around a current event. And I think that's one of the things that makes South Park one of the more like front runners when it comes to social and political commentary in sitcoms, because they can adjust and they can adapt so quick within a week's time frame. They can make an episode so much more relevant than any other cartoon or sitcom or anything can possibly do.
Yeah, and I'm not sure exactly when it came out, but I'm sure it was like right after the election when they had the first Obama, and everyone celebrating in the streets, and Randy's like, everything's changed now. Fuck you, boss.
Yep.
I don't have to take your shit. Obama's in charge now.
That was the I believe that was the Obama's first term. Or that one. Yeah. That was the one where they actually had two separate endings, completely scripted out and animated, ready to go. They were just waiting on to find out. I think it was like the night before they found out who was going to win. So they actually wrote and animated an entire episode according to Romney winning and according to Obama winning. And then they just aired. Like, they found out and aired it that night.
See the alternative takes. They should really
no, I don't think they've ever released that, and I would love to see that. I would have loved to see the Romney.
As a bonus track on the season box set.
I never bought that one. I wish. Yeah, that would be great to see, though.
I'll try and find that, because that would be
if it was, then it would have been already online.
Yeah, that's true.
Probably, yeah.
But yeah, it's like they always do such a good job, as you said, like capturing at the moment stuff. Like while it's hot, that was a perfect example. Like Obama just won, and everyone was in frenzy, and it's like, us libertarians were like no, like reality is still happening. Like it's not like some momentous thing that's gonna change life. It's like I said, like Randy's going to his boss, like we're in a different America now, and it's just like it kind of like highlighted that like idealism of the average voter, like when a new president they really like gets in, like, oh, everything's better now, you'll see, he's gonna change everything.
Well, I do think that's what a lot of people think of. Like, I mean, when Obama got elected, everybody was like, this is going to change the whole world. I was like, oh, things just got worse.
It was a big change when Obama became president.
I do appreciate South Park multiple times calling out the fact that Obama getting elected changes nothing. They did that in the Coon episode. Because they were like, then a black man was elected president. He was supposed to change everything. He didn't. And they did that several times where it was just like nothing fucking changed. I think it was, I don't know if it was during that one or it was during like the other, like the Coon trilogy with Cthulhu, where the goth kids were like, everything was supposed to change and everything's just the same. It's like Obama all over again. They made a lot of pot shots at that. It was just like nothing really changed. It's all the same status quo.
I think the second one was a trilogy.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was the second episode in that trilogy, which is by far one of my favorite things. Because one of the things, like, I like Cthulhu a lot because I'm a huge H.P. Lovecraft fan. So South Park and Cthulhu together was like,
they should really explore more about Kenny and that he can be reborn every time.
I like that they left it like that, though, actually. But okay, so one of the things I want to do tonight, we're kind of hopping all over the place, I know. I'll start with Michael. If you want to hit us with what you feel like is it doesn't have to be your favorite, but like the first episode you feel like you can recall. As when when you hear South Park, what's the first episode that comes to your mind? Why is it that episode? What is it about that episode that you like?
Honestly, probably Sexual Harassment Panda. I think that was just overall great episode. Like it kind of touched on a lot of like weird points if you really pay attention to it. Because like, the school hires this guy to be, the sexual harassment spokesperson, and like, no one likes him, and he goes to the Island of Misfit Mascots, and it's kind of like, in a weird way, it's kind of like saying like you don't have to spread awareness for everything because most of the shit is fucking useless. Like the don't run with scissors tag, and
yes,
you know, it's basically like no shit. Like we don't need a whole week of awareness. They also kind of touch on that with the fetus nurse, the nurse with the fetus on the head, and it was like, you know, they had a whole week about you know, the awareness of this disease, and it's like she's the only one in town that has this disease, and she's like, just leave me the fuck alone.
Right. Well, I think that's one of the things. I'll jump in real quick. Where like I think it was pretty genius because it was like we spend so much time trying to identify like, oh, you have a disability. We need to like talk about it and promote it. And most of those people are just like, just fuck off. Like I just want to be my own person. I don't want to have everybody look at me and see my disability instead of seeing a person, you know, like that was part of the whole thing I got from that. And that's a great point. And the sexual harassment panda was great because it was a great social commentary on frivolous lawsuits because there's just so many out there.
Yeah, that one too. And it was, you know, you just can't not love that episode. That character was just the best. It's like, when you stick your willy inside another panda's ear, that makes me a sad panda. It's like, what?
That makes me a sad panda.
The guy was so into his role, and it's like they're trying to fire him. It's like, Mr. Morris, you don't have a job. It's like, who is Mr. Morris?
Always love that episode. I think that was like the third season too, and I do feel like
that was an old.
Like that's like I would say for me personally, the third season was when they actually hit their stride and they got more into like the commentary, the social political commentary kind of stuff, and they really started doing better at that. I would say for me, like I would tell most South Park fans, I'm like, if you want to find a good starting point, start in the third season because we're going to find some of the best episodes.
And another one I do want to add, just because it's a big political one, when Tweek's parents are like getting the boys to campaign for them against the Starbucks coming to town.
Oh yes.
That was probably one of the earlier political points, and it was like
I think it was like second or third season, but yeah, same thing.
Yeah, and you still see it now with David Hoggins. Like the point is like, you know, you're using children to push an agenda that they know nothing about.
Isn't that the gnome, the pants, the like underwear gnomes or whatever?
Actually, I think it is the same episode.
Yeah, it's the same episode.
Yeah,
that's
because it kind of goes into two different tangents. Because you got the gnomes on one side, and then, you know, the boys have to go and give a report about how they're against corporations taking over. It's like no, like Starbucks is awesome. Like,
that's part of the whole thing. These people became a corporation because they had a good product. I'm like, personally, I don't like Starbucks, but it's like, it's like, hey, they had good coffee. That's why people kept coming to them. That's why they were able to expand and grow. And it's like it's like, you know, using the government to force these people away doesn't actually help. You know, like if a small business is good enough, they're going to grow on their own. They don't need government assistance. Not that the government helps small businesses anyway. But.
Yeah,
those corporations.
That was a big lesson.
And they're all corporation-y.
Oh, looks like we lost Otter.
I think he said that he had to drop off a load or something.
Hopefully no. Yeah, no, he's a truck driver. But yeah. So Madness, we'll move on to you. If you have a particular favorite episode you want to cite.
My favorite episodes are the 201 episodes. They're a little bit called that. It's the ones with Tom Cruise and the Muhammad bullshit.
Okay, so we're talking.
Love those episodes.
Is it the Family Guy one?
No. The
Hey, Otter, you might want to turn off your camera if you don't want us to see you.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you still get it. Just Otter, real quick. We're going individual by individual, talking about your favorite episodes and why. We're currently on Madness, and then I'll probably do Amos next, and then I'll have you go.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. My boss called me.
No worries, man. I figured you had something going on. So,
the
sorry, Ben, keep going.
The 201 episode is about that that Muhammad gets immunity because nobody can joke about him, and Tom Cruise wanted to happen to him as well. Where they even got Muhammad temporarily in the in a bear costume, but then because you cannot show Muhammad not even in a costume, then they changed to Santa Claus in the costume. It is literally the episode about the censorship, basically.
Okay, you know what's funny? Actually, the episode doesn't show up on Hulu, where all of South Park is. It's like
it's no longer aired
actually
here as
still
well
banned.
because it is about Muhammad, and Muhammad episodes are long.
Yeah.
It's the same as the Super Best Friend. This I no longer be allowed to be shown anymore.
Yeah, it's because like
Muhammad.
here's the thing. There's a reference to the episode in the Coon trilogy where they're going to the moon, and on the moon there is Wilsiak, which is the whale that the kids sent to the moon because they thought it belonged on the moon. But there's also Tom Cruise, and that's a result of that episode. But you know what's funny is you can't go back and actually find that episode on Hulu because it doesn't exist. They've banned it.
And in the episode, Mega Streisand came back.
Yep, same one. Yeah.
I love the character Mega Streisand for some reason. But
I like it because of Barbara Streisand, but also I like Godzilla. But yeah, it's just me.
My least favorite.
They went after Barbara Streisand like three times before like 1999.
That's because she's a horrible person. But
yeah, it was great. Like all the Barbara.
No, it's definitely great.
Awesome.
My least favorite one is still the ice hockey one.
You don't like the ice hockey one?
I think there is a part of the jokes that are purely for Americans.
Okay,
I still don't know what's so funny about kids getting beat up by adults.
A lot of the jokes in that one are twists on like classic American sports movies. So I could understand where if you're not familiar with a lot of that stuff, it wouldn't quite sit right. I do absolutely love the entire
I love the beginning
of the adult team beating the fuck out of a junior hockey league.
I really hate the ending where the kids get beat up.
I love that ending. That's my favorite part of that episode. But I'm also an asshole.
Why the fuck do the kids get beat up? What's the
because that's the whole joke. Is that like there's always like you have these American sports movies where like the underdog team wins in the end. And in this situation, it was the absolute reversal where they just got literally got the shit beaten out of them.
The problem idea is that the original they were supposed to against another kids team who didn't show up because they couldn't play. That means normally you would have won anyway. So why the fuck do they still have to go play against another team?
It's satire. That's how satire works. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the moral of the story.
I say it's my favorite episodes.
No, it's fine.
The moral of the story is not everyone gets to be Rudy.
Yes, exactly.
I was just about to mention Rudy.
Okay.
Another big favorite one. It's more special. Yeah. Where they used real life kids, where they go to Amsterdam. And it was an April Fool's episode, by the way.
I will real quick.
I love that one.
We're gonna Amos, it's your turn. If you want to hit us with like a favorite episode of yours and why, go ahead.
Joseph Smith is Mormon, man. Dum 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 dum.
Okay, I will say, and I think this was before the Scientology episode, so I can't fault them for it, but the only thing missing from that episode was the caption of "This is what Mormons actually believe," like they did on the Scientology one. Yeah, that was my favorite part of that episode. But yes, I love the dum 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 dum, and when they talked about the guy's wife.
Smart.
Yes.
Although she was still dumb.
Yes. That is one of the best episodes, I would agree, because growing up Christian, I heard a lot about Mormonism, and every time I looked into it, I was just like, wait, are these guys for real? Like they're serious? You know, I'm like, I
mean, that's some next level shit with planets and
yes,
becoming gods and
It is still Mormonism is still a better thing than the cult of Scientology, in my opinion. But it is not that much better.
It depends upon what you're looking at. I mean,
hey, seven Wives is pretty sweet. I mean, they don't got much else going for it, but hey.
No. No, I think that's a good episode because that's a good solid criticism of a religion where you can just present like they did with Scientology. You can just present the religion of these people actually believe and say, "Hey, this is what they believe." It's stupid.
Wasn't it towards the end that they pretty much pointed out the Mormon family they were hanging out with was they're cool people, we shouldn't be critical on their beliefs, they're just being
that's a good point. That's a good point. That's
right.
That's actually my favorite thing about the episode is at the very end they're like, okay, this religion is fucking retarded, it's stupid, it makes no sense. But in the very end they're like, hey, it works for me and my family, so fuck you for not just accepting us for being this way. I'm like, that's a good point. Just okay, if they're happy, they're treating each other nice, they're not doing any horrible things to each other and stuff because of their religion, why not just let them have it? Why just berate them and insult them for it? Just fuck off and let them be happy with each other.
Oh, speaking of which, I just kind of want to make this point while you're on the subject.
Mm-hmm.
On the Branch Davidians thing, the Waco thing, they did a South Park version of that when they were all in the mansion. And they're all, I think it was the Three Guys in the Hot Tub episode, I think it was called.
Okay.
And, basically...
Oh, no, I know what you're talking about.
Basically, they just completely made...
Sarcasm left.
Oh. Does that mean we're off YouTube?
Oh, we're still live? It's not the first time, by the way. This is the second live stream that happened.
All right. So in case we are still live, they basically did a complete reinterpretation of Waco with that episode, and it's basically we have to stop them from killing themselves by killing them, and that was the whole lesson behind that episode. So it was like I said, basically making fun of Waco. You got the kids in the inside, looking at the news, figuring out what's going on. No, this isn't some cult. It's just a bunch of grown-ups getting drunk at a party.
Wow. While we are waiting for Sarcasm to be coming back, he's probably having some computer trouble. Everyone pretty much said what episode they thought about, right?
I'll throw mine out there right quick. 'Cause I'm gonna have to mute about 10 minutes while I work. Damn, having to make money. My favorite episodes were that I can recall off the top of my head were the Bono Couric episode.
With the big shit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I thought it was hilarious that they and weird they use Katie Couric as a measurement. But that the movie was, of course, great. Every time they make a Canadian joke, I giggle like a retard, and I don't know why. Low hanging fruit, I guess.
Remember the one that was kind of like Wizard of Oz when they go to the Canadian Prime Minister?
Yeah.
Follow the only road.
Yeah, and then it was Saddam Hussein who was the Prime Minister.
Was that the episode when they had the wall? I remember they had a
No, that was basically where Trump was the Prime Minister of Canada.
There's a Canadian Trump.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It was Canadian
where Mr. Garrison literally fucked him to death.
Yeah.
And then
that's the one where they made the wall, and they're because everyone was amped up about the wall onto Mexico, and then they built a wall from Canada.
No, they were doing the wall. Actually, Garrison wanted a wall to Canada, and because he called them a Canuck. And then PC Principal flipped out, basically saying do you think it is okay, or is what it makes you think it's okay to refer to a Canadian immigrant as a Canuck. And then he's like, because basically they had they made the joke that there were too many Canadian immigrants, so you had to like Mr. Garrison had to go to learn Canadian.
But it's still dumb language.
He had to learn like the Canadian alphabet.
Yeah, I just remember in that episode that like Mr. Garrison wanted to climb over the wall at some point because like I want to know what they're hiding behind that thing.
Yeah. Oh. What about the what was it, the episode do you guys ever watch the one about freemium games?
Oh, with the
Canada had to raise money by creating like an app and Jimmy was one of the like pushers of the game. People were just like,
I don't remember that one. No.
They basically
the Canadian Devil.
The Canadians made a deal with the Canadian Devil, and
who kept shitting.
And he the Canadian Devil taught them how to make an app that uses microtransactions. It was a Terrence and Phillip app game. So basically, like free. Basically, yeah, that's free, but then like all the kids like were playing it and they were making like these microtransactions. So like 40 cents, 90 cents, like your typical app.
And Stan had a big I remember the Canada on Strike episode.
Strike, and can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry, my computer like flipped out and just
get a better computer, man.
Well, I'm trying.
It's like a live stream that happened.
Talk to my wife about getting my computer fixed. I'm using hers right now. I fucking hate
it. You're kind of like mid-sentence right there.
No, that's fine. I'm glad the conversation kept going without me, so it's good to know.
So we must go on.
Where are we at?
We started talking about Canadian episodes that I'm not familiar with, and then I started talking about the Canadians on strike.
Oh,
Canada went on strike, and we settled to give them coupons to Bennigan's or something.
That's great. That's actually basically
Canada's now blown up in South Park.
When that writer's strike actually happened, what they got in compensation was basically nothing, and that was their parody of that.
Oh,
it was like, because what they got in compensation was basically nothing, and these people were like, "Oh, we won," and South Park was like, "You guys are fucking morons! You didn't win shit," I do want to say, no, it was based off of real life stuff, yeah.
Yeah, usually.
But in South Park, you got destroyed.
I want to give Otter that connection. Otter, if you're still on, I want to give you a chance to bring up your favorite episode or one that you feel like you have something to comment on.
Oh, he's busy with work, he said.
He's still working.
Yeah, he already shared his episode.
Yeah, he's on.
Well, that's what I get for having a shit computer, huh? Yeah.
He was the one that brought up the Canadian one, so he kind of said his little piece, and then I think he had to go.
I think basically anything that makes fun of Canada is awesome. So
I think
hanging fruit is always the easiest to get a good laugh out of.
Right. Yeah.
I had to move because I wasn't sure about some of the noise, and I'm going to be standing under a reefer unit here in a minute, so I thought I'd spare everybody.
Wait, what about you and reefer? What are we talking about?
Reefer unit.
I was gonna say I can only imagine what'll happen if South Park tries to introduce like another ethnicity that like of people that look completely different from the rest of the world. So how the Canadians looks like completely different from literally everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
What if they made like, I don't know, if they somehow like pulled out some obscure country that people don't like? I don't know, North Koreans. What do you think?
I mean,
have they done North Koreans yet? I can't remember.
I don't know. They would have to take some ethnicity that is somewhat easy to make.
Here's the thing about South Park, though.
I think they made Denmark the European Canadians, and they made them look like Canadians.
Yeah, although in real life, Denmark is nothing like that.
No, I remember
I would say this though.
Denmark made them look like elves and
makes
stuff.
Fun of anybody at this point.
No, they used Denmark twice, and they changed it in the later episodes.
there's going to be a specific group of people that are going to be upset, and the rest of the normal population aren't going to give a fuck. And they're just going to keep going on.
Here's the thing. Comedy Central is swimming with SJWs and PC-ness, you would say. Yet somehow South Park is still on.
I'm
South
amazed.
Park is literally the thing that keeps them alive. Without South Park,
no, but I mean, yeah, I know. I mean,
they know that too.
Hold on, guys. Let's not talk over each other. I want to say, without South Park, Comedy Central won't be where it's at today. And I think they know, regardless of whether or not they're like, oh, this is too offensive for us, if they just completely take off South Park from their network because they find it offensive, they're going to fucking die.
I mean, they had whole shows called, there was that show called Problematic, and it was like really shitty comedians basically
of course,
going on and on about like PC culture and problematic ideas, racism, and all this stuff. And then of course, a lot of comedians, you guys know of Owen Benjamin. Owen Benjamin had a special with Comedy Central and got dropped by them because of his comments on transgenderism in children. And it's funny, like you have all these guys that are edgy comedians that either were dropped or just don't work with Comedy Central anymore. You have Key and Peele, they get pretty edgy, but they're still pretty left-leaning in some ways. I say like there's them. You have South Park, but pretty much beyond that, I haven't really seen anything else. You had what was that bullshit? Inside Amy Schumer, that was a joke.
Okay, anything with Amy Schumer is just the fucking worst.
But the thing is you only have a handful of these shows that are like. Somehow they're still on, and I think it's hilarious, like how South Park is still on. Like it's good.
I'm gonna make this analogy real quick with regards to Comedy Central and South Park. If Comedy Central is the New England Patriots, South Park is Tom Brady.
I'm sorry, I don't even follow football, and I understood that reference.
That is one thing. But there's one problem with something with South Park. Certain jokes are purely for Americans, and a lot of news doesn't even reach it. So you're like, is this supposed to? What's the joke here? And then later on, you'll hear what's actually about, and it becomes actually tons more funnier.
I do want to say,
we don't give a fuck about Europe.
Yeah, nobody cares about Europe. Europe is just shithole. Sorry.
I know.
They got to make an episode about Trudeau.
I do want to say, okay, that would be amazing if they can make fun of that fuck face. From the chat, I do want to say, let's take a minute to comment on the South Park movie, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut. From what people can remember, what do they think? As far as South Park goes, like politically, social commentary wise, like did it help or advance anything? Do you feel like it's more relevant today?
Bigger, Longer, and Uncut, or
Bigger, Longer, and Uncut?
I honestly don't remember too much of the movie. I know it was just kind of.
That was a big war on Canada
for the first time.
Yeah. Well,
and then they had the sort of the cannon fodder for the black people.
Yep, that was the one where they put all the black people into a
Operation Human Shield.
Yep. Could we agree that that's possibly more relevant today, though, of doing the whole scapegoat thing of a particular country rather than addressing the problems that we're actually having in our own country and just deflecting it onto another country and be like, well, this is the problem we're having.
Was that the one about the Terrence and Phillip movie?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Basically, and then they kind of had a revamp of that in the last season.
Yes.
Yeah, but they're now old and got nuked.
Yeah.
Canada's
I'm gonna say this on
season. It's gone.
I'm gonna say this about the movie. If it made any political point, it was about censorship because the whole big thing was they got pissed off at this movie for teaching their kids naughty language, and then they went to war with the country. So it was like it kind of touched on war, but it was more about censorship.
Well,
and it,
I would say
it goes into
go ahead, Michael.
New direction with it goes into a whole new direction with Saddam Hussein, the devil, and everything, and like you said about the Operation Human Shield, they made a lot of political points, but I think mainly it was about censorship. But they also had episodes that led off from the movie, like Saddam Hussein was in heaven or hell or whatever it was, and he was making weapons of mass destruction disguised as a cupcake factory.
And that's one of the things that I wanted to bring up is they actually had an episode where there was like a few episodes where Saddam got banished from hell because he kept like seducing Satan. So he got banished from hell to heaven where there's a bunch of Mormons, and then eventually Saddam started doing chemical weapons, but he disguised it as a cookie factory. But yeah, that's a whole other thing. What I wanted to say
with the cookie factory, it's the same one where the kids want to go to heaven because Kenny was cremated and had
it's a whole thing. One of the things I wanted to bring up about though, where the movie kind of tied into the TV show was talking about how one of the things the TV show really touched on was the fact that the parents were all like, okay, we can't have our kids watching this. This is too horrific. This is too awful. But one of the things that the parents started doing to protest was to launch themselves at the fucking studio and basically murder themselves over and over. And they're like, this is for the good of our children to make sure they don't see anything like too horrific for them. And the parents were slaughtering themselves. And then they all had like some fucking stomach virus thing. So they were all like shitting themselves like crazy. And they were all giggling amongst themselves about how much they were shitting and how hilarious that was to them. But then they were like, no, toilet humor is too much for our kids. And then they would go like shit a bunch in the porta potties, laugh about it, and then go launch themselves violently at the fucking building and explode themselves on it. And it's like, oh yeah, that's much better. I think that was like, for what the actual series, I think I want to say season 3, but if I'm wrong, somebody will probably correct me. Season 3 or season 2, for like, one of the things that portrayed is that parents will take such like crazy steps to be like, okay, well, we can't let our kids watch this. And the steps that they start to take become like counterproductive. It's like you start to forget. Like here's a good example. When we look at, and this is a common joke in pretty much any fucking medium these days, is that our current media is more concerned about sex than violence. Like you can watch a guy getting his head cut off and that's fine. But if you even hint at the fact of like a man and a woman having sex with each other, suddenly that's what slaps you with the R rating. I was like, violence is fine, sex is terrible. And I think that's part of the point they were getting at, is like censorship is wonky and fucking weird.
So what you're saying, Josh, is you want us to talk about sex the rest of the stream?
Okay, if we're gonna talk about sex for the rest of the stream, I'm fucking fine with that. No, I'm just
What the?
Balances in. Why is one form like? Why does one thing need to be censored more than the other? It's weird, isn't it? Like I think that's a part of the point. I would say across South Park's whole fucking run, I would say that's a point that they're slowly getting across. Is why that's like their entire philosophy. It's either it's all okay or none of it's okay, and they say that so much. So if we're going to look at their entire show as a whole, that it's a very good thing to keep in mind. It's like, why is one form of censorship more important than another form of censorship? Why is sex so bad but violence is okay? And then that's where, for me, where censorship just completely falls apart, because it really seems to become like whoever's actually making that call, their personal feelings kind of thing. Like, well, sex is terrible. We can't have that. But yeah, somebody getting his head lopped off is fine.
It's exposing the hypocrisy within everyone's tribalistic moral codes, and which is really a damning indictment of the moral code that says a boob is going to send you to hell, but let's watch something literally gush gallons of blood in combat. Yeah, okay.
No. Here's to build off of that, and I think that's an excellent point. I grew up in a very Christian household. That's growing up. That's why I used to be very conservative until I started moving on to libertarianism. My parents had no problem talking to me about the violence of the Bible. Like, I had a very good concept of what violence was at a very young age because of the Bible. But when it came to sex stuff, like when I'm asking, they're constantly talking about the virgin birth of Christ. And I'm like, oh, what's a virgin? And suddenly everybody's like, ooh, let's find a safe way to explain it to this kid.
In the Bible.
No, and I'll say literally, one of the explanations I got when I was a kid was it's somebody who's not married. I was like, looking back, I'm like, well, that's such a fucking cop-out answer. I was like, because one of the things I said was like, one of my responses I remembered that made them feel uncomfortable was my aunt, who had been divorced at times, like, oh, so she's a virgin because she's not married right now? And they're like, yeah. Well, looking back, I can see, but like, why was all the violence part of the Bible fine, but the sex part was so taboo? And I think that's one of the things that South Park brings to the light is like, okay, you either need to be able to talk about, discuss, make fun of everything, or it's all taboo. You cannot pick and choose what you feel like is okay to talk about. Everything should be fine. Be open with people. Be open about your feelings. Be open with your kids. It makes no sense to pick and choose what you feel like is right and wrong because, essentially it's all the same thing.
Kenny.
Yeah. And, it's with South Park, it's less about sex and more about the words. Like, they'll really focus on, the banning of words. Like, the Apologies to Jesse Jackson episode, where we're on Wheel of Fortune. He's like, I'm sorry, I just thought I was gonna win a lot of money. And one of the like very subtle jokes, in a way, was when he had to apologize to Jesse Jackson, he literally pulled down his pants and said, "Kiss my ass."
Yes.
So basically, like, it was pretty direct, but basically they're saying, like, the way that the media runs and, betrays people that, like, just say a word and have to apologize for it is basically like kissing ass.
Yep. No, and I think that's one of, like, the genius
of the episode where they literally had no record for the word shit.
Well, and I think that's one of the genius parts of South Park is that they can take something and like it's satirical and parody, but it's also so point blank, like the whole kissing Jesse Jackson's ass. So, like, yeah, that was a literal act in that episode, but it was also very metaphorical of just how SJWs as a whole are like, well, it doesn't matter if we're right or wrong. We're going to kiss his ass just to stay safe.
Yeah. It becomes a play on words with the literal act.
Yes. Okay, here's a good one from the chat. The It Hits the Fan episode, which, in case anybody's not entirely sure of that one, that's where they say the word shit almost 200 times.
I said that.
I remember that.
Best one.
Here's the thing. Here's
saying the word shit.
Yeah, here's a good background for that episode from my research. They were like, hey, because they said the word shit in some advertisement for like a cop show. And they're like, okay, we want to say shit in our episode uncensored. And the network was like, no, we can't do that. It's not going to happen. You can't say shit uncensored. So
Didn't
they're
they
like,
negotiate like a
okay.
specific number of times, and then they had a
Yeah.
counter in the corner.
Yeah, no, they came back and they said, okay, what if we say shit 200 times? And the network is like, oh yeah, that's fine. It boggles your mind. It's like, wait, what? Why is it saying it isn't fine, but saying it 200 times is like totally fine? And they're like, yeah, because they made a whole thing around it, and they also like talked about how they thought it was kind of funny because the quote unquote moral they had to put onto the story to make it fit basically said that like saying shit too many times is bad, but that's not how they felt. But that's the way they had to frame it in order to get around the censors to be allowed to say the word shit almost 200 times completely uncensored. But I think that's a great episode that just shows like how like standards and practices is just so illogical about what they do.
Yeah, and another point of that was, the little knights that came after everyone when they started saying too much.
The Knights of Standards and Practices, yeah.
Yeah, but it's kind of like a reality check. Like, what's really gonna happen if we say shit? Is like, and then they kind of paint it up like this fictional, like, oh, if you say shit too many times, these like warlords from another dimension are gonna come and kill everyone.
Right.
It's like no.
Blake came back.
That was their whole thing, was to like the joke was that a curse word meant an actual like word of curse, and saying curse words would like invoke some kind of evil thing. That was the whole joke, but like they like begrudgingly had to actually frame it. That made it sound like cursing too much was a bad thing. And that was the only way they could get around the censors, to actually say the word shit so many times completely uncensored. And they weren't particularly happy about that, but hey, they got to say do an episode where they could say the word shit over and over and over and over. So
even a joke, Mr. Garrett and Jim, like with the word faggot. Like Mr. Garrett said, "I'm gay, so I can say faggot." And
that's the same episode. Yeah.
Jim looked like say faggot, and he was because someone is okay.
You're getting a little robotic, Madness, but I think I know what you're talking about. Was where that entire episode where it's the same episode where Garrison's like, well, like, I'm gay, so I can say the word faggot, and you can't. And he kept calling everybody faggot the whole time. Yeah. And then, like, he's in an argument with some people at the bar, and I think it's, like, Jim or whatever, which is Stan's uncle, was like, well, that's not fair. I should be allowed to say fag if I want to. And then he doesn't get, like, the bleep. And then, Garrison starts making fun of him because apparently he's actually gay because he said that. The whole thing I remember for that episode, which is my favorite thing, is just Garrison cheerily singing, "Hey there, shitty, shitty, fag, shitty, shitty, fag." I'm like, Jesus Christ, you guys are so offensive. I fucking love it so much.
They really push the envelope.
Oh, yes.
They really do.
I hate how on YouTube I don't know that I would be able to make an episode about speech police and use full words instead of blank hyphen word every time.
Yeah, of course you couldn't, because YouTube is wholesome.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, right. But just as an educational way of doing it, if or saying there is such intolerance of with the speech police, it's got to the point where we can't even use the word in quotations, quoting someone. He said this. They said that. Jimmy said fag, such and such. I remember, I'm 35. I remember getting in trouble in school for saying, for repeating what someone said, because or reading it from a book, because it was, I was taught this is something that's wrong. Why is this in one of our books, or why is this being quoted here? And somebody getting all hushed about the fact that we have words we can't say, as if they are such such curse words when no one is willing to make them. No one has been taught to, or no one is willing to make the distinction between the epithet and an academic use of the word. And I think that it's a damn shame. I mean, sorry to get off topic, but I think
go for it.
In our society that we have reached such an intellectual low that we can no longer and are no longer willing to do so.
I think, Otter, what you bring up is a good point, and I'm going to bounce back to that episode. They were talking about shit hits the fan, where one of the curse words turns out to be microb, and that's because it's a appetizer at some kind of restaurant that Cartman doesn't like. And it's like, I don't like this word, therefore, I don't know. It's like, I don't like this dish, therefore the word must be a curse word. And it turns out to be the same thing. And I think that's like, it was kind of a hilarious to me commentary on the fact that it was like, oh, we don't like this word. It's got to be a curse word. It's got to be bad to say. And I think that, like reiterates the whole point of is like, they're just fucking words. It's like, okay, you don't like the word, just get the fuck over it. Like who cares?
And basically how it's subjective, where it's like just because Cartman doesn't particularly like it, it becomes an evil thing.
Exactly, precisely. Yeah.
I remember my grandparents you could see the visceral reaction at the name George Carlin or Richard Pryor.
Oh,
because of their acts, But it's that part of that is what part of their act is the fact of saying what they said and the way they said it. The taboo of it was so great. It was what made it so great in part.
Mm-hmm.
But imagine George Carlin doing what he did 20 years ago today. I mean.
No, he would be like ostracized. Like people would flip the fuck out on him.
Yeah, Bill Maher could not do what he does today without having the classically liberal philosophy that we had in society of being able to not just take a joke, but also understand what he was doing, how he was doing it, the purpose behind it, and finding comedy in all of it and mixed together.
Here's the thing, too. I just don't understand. Like, where you got bitches like Amy Schumer who are just basically going on stage and just talking about, like, oh, my vagina, I love cum. And they're saying all this, like, what would be considered offensive shit, but it's, like, applauded and stuff. But people who will use offensive terminology in a way that makes you think and makes you, like, question how things are actually going, they're the ones that are deemed to be the bad people. I was like, what the fuck is going on here?
That's a crime. It's thinking.
The political comedy.
I would say free thinking is definitely a crime these days. That's
Absolutely.
Something to me that South Park has proved over and over, where you it just shows. It's like, oh, well, I want to think differently from the status quo, and now I'm considered a bad person for it.
Right.
Okay. I would say, no, go ahead.
I was going to bring up another episode. Madness is going all robotic.
No, it's fine. Go ahead, Otter.
It's Mike talking.
Sorry. Oh, I was talking.
But one episode was the economy episode where getting out in the middle of town square, like saying that we have to pray to the economy and like how the economy is like some magical entity, and
that was the episode with the the margarita maker thing, right?
Yeah, but they brought it back to the government, and they're like, oh, let's see how much this thing is worth, and they basically cut a chicken's head off.
They cut a chicken head off, let it run around, and wherever it landed, that's how much something was worth. I was like,
yeah.
It's like,
So
oh,
it's
that's
like
a great metaphor for how the government works.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so it's like, yeah, it shows that metaphor how the government works, and like then it, like shows like the normal person like thinking because it's like people don't think of things as they are, where it's like people doing things and making things happen, and the world actually running the way it's supposed to run. They think of things as like magical entities. Like they think of government as a magical entity. They think of the magical entity. They think of science as a magical entity. Stuff like
Well,
that, and like it.
if I can real quick just butt in, I want to say, like, if you talk to people, especially on the left, about how they think capitalism works, that episode makes so much sense. Unfortunately,
Right.
it's like they just think like just things just happen like by chance, and I was like, no, that's not how capitalism is supposed to work. And typically, it's this confusion between crony capitalism and corporatism. It starts to boggle your mind. It's like, no, there's an actual
Oh yeah.
legit formula behind how things are supposed to work, but they just think everything's random, as if somebody's cutting the head off a chicken and letting it run around a fucking board and figuring out like, oh, it landed here, so this must be the value of X. No, that's not how it works, dude.
Yeah.
Just since Farley was.
Hey, man, you're getting a little robotic, man.
It's a great. Sorry.
Go ahead, Otter.
It's a great demonstration of a saying that's kind of nebulous in my head. I can't remember exactly how it went, but something about given sufficient. I think it's ignorance. I don't know. I'm not sure. Given sufficient ignorance, there's no difference between magic and science. Mm-hmm. And it's a great again, I need to look that up and make sure I've got that right, because I'm pretty sure I'm wrong. But anyway, it's a great demonstration of how if someone doesn't know how something works, then they just imagine it, and that becomes how it works. And
yeah.
Okay, if like Otter, if you can find a link for that, that would be great, because that actually sounds like that makes a lot of sense. Where people are like, they don't understand how it works, so they think it's this kind of like magical entity that just haunts people or something. That's what a lot of my experience with like anti-capitalist seems like.
And yeah, like I was saying, it's like people think that things are things within themselves, where it's like no, like there's like real components to it. It's not like this big bag of ridiculousness that it's portrayed to be.
Yeah. Well, I think that particular episode is a great example, because when we're talking about capitalism, we're talking about corporations, we're talking about people making decisions within their business that affect the lives of millions of people. It is not, some mystical thing. It's like, it's very specific. These people are trained. They are hired to make these decisions. That's why they get paid so much money, because the wrong decision could cost them and their company millions of dollars. That's why they get paid so much. But that's what that episode proves is, I don't want to say it proves, although that episode hints at is so many people think that it's just some people cutting the head off a chicken and letting it fucking run around a table and deciding like, well, that's where it landed. That must be what it is. Like, no, these people are trained very highly for this. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry. I found that quote, but I pulled a bush and misremembered.
No, it's fine.
I was shifting it into from a Arthur C. Clarke quote, which oddly enough it's apt. You just got to shove economics into it at some point. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, and I find that a lot of people seem to apply that to, well, pretty much any science or anything they truly don't understand, don't have a reasonable explanation for. Anyway, I'm sorry.
No, that's actually Otter. That's an amazing point. And I'm going to detract from that slightly, while also kind of trying to stay on point. Go to magicians who are using just regular fucking magician stuff. Like it's all explainable by science. It's all explainable very easily. But they're doing stuff, and you have these like Christians who are like, well, there's the only way they could do this is by demonic like activity. It's like, or they could just be very, well trained in how they're doing that. It doesn't have to be, the answer doesn't have to be demons, but people don't understand something, so they start looking for a different reason outside of what they do understand. And a part of the sad problem is just so many fucking people in this country are retarded. They just don't understand the simple facts of how an economy.
One in four retarded.
So they start looking for like an alternative answer. There must be a conspiracy, or there must be some like mystical activity going on that's just driving all of this.
Because like, is physics evil? Like, is the airplane the invention of the devil?
Some people legitimately think that, and that's sad.
Because we've drummed critical thinking out of the Prussian model of our education, we just simply are left to use imagination, because that's all we're left with as far as the tools we're given in school. So
no, that's a great point.
They just have us regurgitate what we see in a book instead of teaching us how to go find it on our own, and that's what we're left with.
I would say, like, to add on that, Otter, I do feel like a lot of what we're trained to do is to just accept what we're told rather than find out, seek out answers for ourselves. I've looked back on my time in high school and realized how many, like, just bold-faced lies I was told, And I'm like, man, like, they told me this and I believed it because they were telling me this is history. And then when you look into it, you're like, wait, this isn't how this happened at all. This is so different. And
it's the condensation of what they want you to think, given from a position of authority. And at that kind of age, we've been taught since we were able to walk that we look to authorities of authority for staying alive.
I think that would actually be a good point for like a whole new topic sometime for another live stream. So remind me about that one. I think that would be a great, like, we could probably get a solid hour out of that whole topic. I do want to, I'm going to have to probably close the stream in a little bit. So let's kind of try to cycle it back into some South Park.
I just want to say that the episodes is that when Stan's father was like, we should no longer spend money in order to make the economy work. That is exactly.
Well, all right, you're cutting out a little bit, Menace. Okay, real quick. Here's what I want to do. I'm going to give everybody a chance. One more time, kind of like what we did before, where you get a chance to discuss a specific episode. But for you, this isn't going to be necessarily your favorite episode. This is going to be the episode that made you kind of connect South Park to libertarianism. This is the episode of South Park that you watch where you're like, okay, there's an obvious connection going on here. So I'm going to start with Amos, and then like if you can think of an episode that made you get that connection between the two. If you want to name it, the episode if you can, and then talk about it a little bit.
So an episode that kind of points to libertarianism.
Yep.
I mean, the overall attitude they have, I really don't have a thought on this particular episode. They all kind of, I guess, blend together. But overall, they tend to have a very sort of pragmatic view of the world. A lot of those episodes where you have that sort of final lesson at the end of the episode where they're kind of like, Kyle or Stan, or they're doing that little like, well, in the end, it's just really, they'll do something.
I think it's typically Kyle where he's like, well, I learned something today.
Yeah, and then it tends to point towards like, we acknowledge that basically the two extremes that were satirized in this episode both have their pros and cons to their beliefs. But really, it's just, kind of like Don't be a dick. Understand these things. That I guess that in overall that's more of a libertarian sentiment. Now, in terms of actual like policy and beliefs, I would say the way Trey Parker and Matt Stone go about the show is very libertarian. Although they probably would. I don't know if they'd ever do an episode full on to basically like show, like, basically trying to show libertarianism in some positive light. They just kind of show the extremes of both sides to get people to think more critically, which is the first step to maybe becoming more of a centrist or maybe becoming a libertarian. So,
if nothing else, is a step towards questioning like whatever hole you dug yourself into.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. That's a great point. Okay. Well, Amos, if you don't have anything else to add on to that, I will hand it over to Madness. If you want to talk about a particular episode you feel like might have kind of like let you tie the series in with libertarianism or anything like that.
Not any. That Asperger with President Duck.
The Asperger's one was really good. Yeah.
Well, but President Duck would literally literally shit. Like president fucking do.
Yeah.
That episode was I think really funny to do.
No, that's a good one. Yeah. I think there's like a two-parter too, where that's actually like two of my favorite episodes where it's the whole like Stan just becomes a cynical asshole and everything looks and sounds and smells like shit to him. So he just hates everything, and I'm like, yeah, that's kind of how I feel like a lot of the time. But yeah.
The only ended a bit too soon. Like they should a bit more continue like that. Carl and Stan are not friends for a few couple episodes more longer. Wish they did that bit, man. Yeah, cannot change it anymore.
All right. Well, I'm gonna sorry, give me 1 sec. I'm gonna turn it over to Otter. Are you still here with us, man?
Yes, sir. All right. I forgot an episode earlier, and that was the section of the child harassment one where they get all their the child protective services one where they get pretty much every adult in the town sent off to jail, and it turns into that Star Trek episode of the Planet of the Children.
Dude, that's one of my favorite episodes. I know exactly. I can't think of the name of it, but yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Neither can I. Yeah, but to the one that kind of got me pointed towards libertarianism is somewhat tangentially related to that, but it was the classic douche turd sandwich episode. It's like, there shouldn't be, we should not be left with this binary craptastic proposition where we don't have an option. You know, why is there no third, fourth, fifth option here? Why are we stuck in this binary paradigm of binary nightmares paradigm?
I think that's actually a great point too. Is that's like why this one, still one of my favorite episodes, and typically every time elections come around, I always point to that because I'm just like, okay, I have a shit candidate and a shit candidate. How am I supposed to pick between the two of these two shit candidates? Which ones I like best? I'm either going to go third party. I'm not going to fucking know. Yeah. And I'm like, I've had people get legitimately mad at me for making this statement, but I'm like, I'm sorry, but I'm going to vote for whoever I think is the best. And if the Republicans and the Democrats cannot produce a candidate, like in the last election and the one before that and the one before that and the one before that, where I'm like, okay, this one seems better than the other, why the fuck would I vote?
Yeah.
Why would I vote for the two parties?
And touching on that, I'd also like to mention the Kang Kodo selection of The Simpsons.
Yes.
Don't blame me. I voted for Kodo.
Yeah, no, that's one of the because he's like, well, I'm going to vote for because they're like, you have to vote for one of us, and either way, like your planet is doomed. And the guy was like, well, I'm going to go vote third party. And then the
go ahead.
Vote away. Yeah.
Ross punches his hat.
Yes. It just shows like Simpsons would be another one I'd be willing to invoke for some time because I'm a huge Simpsons fan. And if I can ever do that one, I'm definitely gonna have to try to get.
I cannot wait till the third show
Libertarian on here.
I do want to say. I do want to say one thing Otter mentioned about the one where they, took all the parents away. I think that was actually a parody on what's it, Children of the Corn.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Because the couple comes in, they're like, what do you mean there are no parents around? Like, it's
no, they definitely they pulled a lot of stuff from that Children of the Corn movie, like the whole parents being disappearing and stuff. But they also pulled some from a Star Trek episode from the original series where like all the parents were gone. It was just a bunch of kids. But
okay.
I do feel like that episode was very like it showed how about like easily part of the whole thing was the kids were banishing parents because they claimed that the parents were molesting them. And part of the parents, none of the parents had actually molested their kids. Part of the therapy was having to admit that they did, even though they didn't.
Right.
I thought that was like, oh, that's fucking weird, but yeah.
Yeah, and it kind of goes into the false accusation thing.
Oh yes, definitely.
Yeah, but the Me Too. It's currently going on.
Yeah, and that is exactly what I feel like applies to a lot of South Park and political stuff. So, who hasn't talked yet? Michael, have you not?
Yeah, but I'm gonna add, and this is a big one for political points, is the medicinal fried chicken episode.
Yes, I watched that recently.
Because I didn't really know what libertarianism was until probably about 2008, 2009. Really, so
big balls.
That episode came out around then, and it really spoke to me because it hit on so many points where it's like, you had the weed store open up and they banned KFC, and then KFC became black market, and they also had the thing where Randy purposely got cancer to get the medicinal marijuana, and I think that was a point that was really underrated in this episode because, like, I live kind of in the city area. I'm like slightly outside the city, but like I know people that will like hurt themselves just to go in, get painkiller fixes.
Yeah.
So I think they were really putting a kind of spotlight on that kind of stuff with that episode. It's like, like I said, like actually having seen that kind of stuff where it's like, you actually see people trying to hurt themselves or trying to like fake sick to get whatever medication they are, and then it's basically like, well, to smoke weed you have to be sick, and then it's like, well, people are just gonna become sick and collect welfare and smoke weed.
Well, I think they even called out in that episode that everybody abuses the medical marijuana law anyway. Why can't we just make it legal?
Yeah, that too.
Okay.
But
that's a great episode. That's one of my favorites.
But I think the other point where it's like, KFC gets banned and the black market comes up and Cartman basically becomes Scarface of KFC, and basically just goes to show it's like no matter what it is, like
chicken skin.
No matter what it is, if there's a demand for it, there's going to be a market for it.
Always.
And it's kind of ridiculous where it's like you're having gang wars over KFC, and that was the point of it, like to show how ridiculous lengths business will go to keep up with the market.
Scarcity. How do it work?
I think it shows like that was the thing is prohibition doesn't work. It's like, oh, we're going to cut this out. It's just going to prop up somewhere else, and what's going to bring with that is crime. Yeah, that's a better solution. Okay, that's actually if I had personally had to cite one of my favorite episodes, and like while the episode itself isn't one of my favorites, the message behind it is, and that would be medicinal fried chicken, is because of that whole black market thing. One of my favorite things is Cartman Land, and I think this is a very good. Yeah, it's where Cartman gets his own theme park, and he's like, nobody else can come, but he slowly realizes that, oh, I have to hire employees. I have to let people come into my park so I can pay for this. It's kind of this realization that I was like, okay, you can have this wonderful product, but like you do have to have responsibilities. You have to hire people. You have to pay people. You have to figure out who can come in, how many people you can have per day to address this. It's actually a pretty brilliant view of capitalism. It's like, okay, having this. Go ahead.
It brings you step by step, because it's like, he like, lets in 2 people at first because he needs someone to, maintenance the rides, and it's like, well, now you need people to, take care of this now that you're letting this many people, and it's like, step by step by step by step to like really how business works.
Exactly. So it's like a kind of a slow burn onto like, okay, hey, this is how business works. It's like, yes, you can have this wonderful product. You can feel like you're this huge entrepreneur, but all of a sudden you start to realize like, oh, I have to pay somebody for this product, part of my product. Oh, I have to pay this. Oh, okay, so I guess I need to let people in. I need to sell a service. And it's like, okay, capitalism isn't as easy as just owning something. To do things. It is a responsibility. You cannot just own something, sit back, and enjoy the profits. Like you do have to take steps to make sure your business is profitable. That's one of the reasons I love Cartman Land. I would say for me, one of my other favorites, off the top of my head, is My Future Self, or whatever it's called, where they had like this company would pretend to have like your future self come and interact with you and be like addicted to drugs and stuff, and they kept constantly saying like, well, it's the ends that justify the means. And then eventually eventually the parents actually sit down and be like, okay, well, here's the real reality of it, is it's probably not going to ruin your life, but while you're doing drugs, you could probably be doing other things to actually like make yourself a better person. Like, don't just let yourself become a druggie just because it feels good. Like, actually apply yourself and become a person. And then like in the end, that's where Stan is like, yeah, I wish you would have just told me that from the beginning. Just been honest with me. Don't lie to me.
Real future self.
Yeah. Like don't lie don't lie to me to convince me that drugs are bad. Just be honest with me why you think not necessarily drugs are bad, but why they could be a waste of time. It's like,
is that the one where it ends that Cartman decides against getting healthy and yada yada, and then right before his future self poofs out of existence? Okay,
yes. That's the one where like the actual like Cartman's like, hey, this is the time. Like future Cartman, he's all like healthy and thin, and he's like, this is where you realize you can turn your life around. And Cartman thinks it's a scam, so he's like, oh, I'm gonna eat whatever I want, do whatever I want, and then the guy like turns into a fat like slob. Like immediately, No, that's a great one. That's the thing about South Park, is they have this ability to take kind of what you might think would just be like minute, like nonsensical plots, and turn them into an extremely well thought out commentary on social and political stuff.
Yeah, and I do want to just add real quick on the episode you were just talking about before that, at the Cartman Land one.
Yes.
Now, Cartman actually made that place successful. He got it sold to him because it was a dying business.
Yes.
Cartman actually turned it around by dumb luck of, not letting anyone in and creating hype. And the guy comes back when the business is booming saying, I want to buy it back from you. And he's like, offers him like, double the money back. He's like, yeah, just take it. I don't want to be part of it anymore. So it kind of like, it kind of shows where it's like, you know, you're making money, but it is stressful.
Yeah. Well, I think part of the thing was originally the guy was like Cartman was actually being sued because people were being like Kenny got killed on his roller coaster and stuff like that, and he wasn't paying taxes, and he had all these responsibilities he was neglecting. So the guy was like, well, I'll buy it back for you. Like, I wish I could buy it back for you. And Cartman was like, yes, I want nothing to do with this place anymore. It's a pain in my ass.
Yeah.
And then suddenly he realizes like all the money he got back gets immediately seized by like the IRS and lawyers for the lawsuit and stuff. And they're like, oh, well, your park's doing so well, you'll make it back in no time. He's like, well, I don't fucking own the park anymore. And so he's in debt, like hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's an interesting, like, it's a cautionary tale thing. You know, like, it's like, if you're going to own a business, you need to actually invest in it. You need to make sure you're doing a good job with it. Don't just bail out the first time of stress, because you're going to have fees, and every fucking business you own is probably going to at some point have a lawsuit because people are idiots. But,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think in the beginning of the episode, he originally got the money because his grandmother died and like left him.
It was an inheritance. Yeah. It was just $1 million or like $100 million or something. I can't remember, but I know like he was freaking out because it was one of my favorite episodes. I used to watch it all the time when I was overseas too, because that's when it first came out. And it was like he got all this inheritance from his grandmother, and then his kids are like, his friends are like, you didn't earn that, and he's like, hey, I had to put up all these like spit-filled kisses and stuff. Don't tell me I didn't earn it. But then, like, all these people are like, you know, the priest is like, well, God could really use that money for like a nicer church. And Cartman's like, well, I think God has enough money. You know, he's just, but like he invested it in himself. He slowly learned that solely running the business based off of your own personal pleasure doesn't actually work. You have to have a business mindset.
Right. Yeah, I honestly kind of forgot about that. That was a really good political one, or economic one, I should say.
Oh yeah, for sure. All right, guys, what I'm going to do is, because it's been about 2 hours now, so I want to wrap up the stream real quick. I would actually like to do another South Park stream. This has been a lot of fun. So we'll get another one scheduled. I do want to give everybody a chance to give kind of a closing statement thing. Like if you got one last episode you want to bring up, or one last final statement you want to bring up before we shut off the stream, go ahead. Michael, I'm going to start with you.
Can you pass by me real quick? I'm just in the middle of something.
Totally fine. Madness, what do you got?
Basically, that whole line of Mr. Garrison, Miss Garrison. Like he was first a really big gay hater. Then he was gay. Then he turned into basically a straight trans woman. Then he turned into a lesbian. And then he just turns back into a man. But then like, is he now gay? Is he straight? Is he like what the fuck is he now?
He is so all over the face.
That's the only thing. But I still like I don't want to think that they have.
And now he's the president.
Yeah. Who have literally fucked someone to death.
Yeah, yes, he's gonna fuck them all to death. That's good stuff.
But either on the that economy episode is where Dan's father was literally stating like we should no longer spend money. What is horrendously awful for an economy?
Yeah,
you must spend money for an economy to work.
Yeah, you kind of have to.
But one thing that I found so stupid about why the left are like, oh, taxes did, tax that, because but if it taxes, people have less money, meaning they will spend less money.
Yeah.
What is not good for an economy? But a lot of those people doesn't understand how the economy works.
It's very apparent by a lot of
what I love so much about that particular episode.
I always say that's a brilliant thing about South Park, is bringing up like a lot of points about the economy. Sometime I've talked about my like raising hope. I could bring that up on another stream sometime because I don't want to drag this out. But there's an extremely great parallel of the government, like the Federal Reserve, and how it can affect the economy on this show, Raising Hope. And maybe I'll talk about that next time. Otter, what do you got, man?
I'm kind of exhausted my South Park knowledge,
Fine.
but I do like how they have combined some of the essences of how Mel Brooks made commentary on historic things and Monty Python's currently topical things, and blended it in a cartoon format that they can update weekly, and it's always virtually seamless within that structure of the kids. You know, they have just done it in such a good way in their own format that it works, and you don't realize until after you've been entertained that you've been educated on something like that.
Well, yeah, that's the thing is it's education disguised as entertainment, and that's one of the brilliant things of like South Park is that because they can go week to week, a lot of their topics are actually, it's very based on current events. So if you're not up to date on current events, you might not realize it, but you can actually go back and watch a lot of those episodes and be like, oh, that makes sense to what we're dealing with today. And it kind of shows how like ahead of their time they are and how topical they can actually be, is that they can have episodes that are 4 years old and still make sense, with different people, different situations, but the message stays the same.
Yep.
So, Amos, do you got anything you want to add?
I think I remember growing up, family used to really think like South Park was pretty degenerate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but as I've become more politically and culturally aware of just stuff in general, I tend to think South Park is one of the few pure sort of adult cartoons. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are good other ones. I mean, Simpsons is good, Family Guy is good, but I think compared to them, like South Park is truly like they do their own thing.
I hear a slight echo.
Yeah, they do their own thing. Like, I mean, not to knock. Oh, well, I'm just gonna knock on the other one. Screw it. Simpsons and Family Guy are pretty much mirror images of each other in a lot of ways. American Dad is just a knockoff of Family Guy.
American Dad's so much better though.
But I mean,
I would agree there. But let's not go down that road.
There's such a push for edginess.
Mm-hmm.
South Park doesn't do that. South Park is its own thing. I mean, they are. I truly believe they're in a league of their own when it comes to the commentary, the jokes, the just over the top theatrics. What they do.
It doesn't seem like they try. They just do.
They just do it. I mean,
everyone else is trying hard.
Someone's got the video going on in the background.
That's my bad. Sorry, guys.
No problem. But yeah, I mean, Family Guy is like really milks a lot of stupid stuff. Like, just there's a lot of moments I think can go dull very easily. American Dad, I just never got. Simpsons is getting old, honestly.
As
I
a
think
Simpsons fan, I can agree with that.
It's just becoming repetitive. It's not really it's not fresh anymore. And I mean, and really, a lot of other shows are really trying to push the envelope. I mean, adult cartoons in general are really pushing this. Like, hey, let's anthropomorphize something else. Let's do aliens, animals.
Yeah.
I mean, freaking French fries, pop. I mean, just, just more and more like trying too hard.
Yeah.
I mean, South Park is very basic, very simple. The animation is not ridiculously complicated. They're not doing, I mean, I'd say they probably spent the most money was on their movie. Everything else is, I mean, they are digitizing their animation technology, but it's still so basic.
I would say that's what actually makes them more story oriented, is because of that fact. Yeah.
Because the content is worth it. That you don't need all this other stuff. Like it's just all these other ones I've mentioned. They all try to like mix in other things. I mean, there's unique things about them. I mean, Simpsons with the intro, they do it different every single time. That's really cool.
Well, like Bob's Burgers does the same thing with their
Family Guy is trying, does a bunch of cutaway stuff. That's really cool. They're all unique. And
South Park has gone the opposite direction from where J.J. Abrams went.
Yeah, they're sticking with what they know, and they're doing it. They're experimenting. Obviously, we talked about the serial. They made series of things, but they're still really sticking to their guns. Matt Stone, Trey Parker still doing a lot of their own shit. They're doing their own thing. They're still working it. They're not above it all or anything.
And they worked at 2 games in the meantime as well.
Yeah, they're very humble about what they're doing, and they work hard. Like, they are masters of their craft, I think, which is what makes them so pure as a show. If I had to choose an adult cartoon, I'd choose South Park.
Oh, definitely.
So
agree with you there.
Is that you got anything else you want to add on to that, Amos? Or
that was it.
Okay. Michael, do you want to, since you're the only one that hasn't had a chance to chime in yet, do you want to hop on?
Yeah. In regards to all the others, Family Guy, I think, is the worst of the bunch. The cutscenes really make it. Simpsons is a classic. American Dad is probably the greatest new thing. And King of the Hill is the shit. The one last South Park point I want to bring up is the episode where they launched the car into space, the little derby thing into space, and the alien comes down and leaves a space cache. And basically,
that's a great episode.
They take the space cache and they spread it all around, and I think it was a bunch of ridiculous things. It was a bunch of ridiculous things, like Mexico ended up building like 1 million water parks or something like that.
Yeah, they built a bunch of water parks and stuff, and they were like, "Yeah, Mexico really needed water parks."
Yeah, and then the aliens come back down like a week later, like, "You fucking idiots! Like, space cash is just fucking paper. It's only worth as much as you think it's fucking worth."
They nuked Finland in as well in the country.
They nuked Finland in that one. Okay, remind me, guys, next time we have this, do a South Park live stream, which I want to do another one of these. Remind me to talk about Raising Hope and their commentary, because I talked about this on a stream with Nico and Shane. But
I watched the whole season of the show, by the way.
Brilliant commentary on federal currency. It is one of the best things I've ever seen on any kind of television show. I will make that the forerunner of our conversation next time. But Michael, if you want to wrap up what you were saying real quick.
No, I think I'm good. We can start cutting this. We've been on for like 2.5 hours almost now.
Yeah, we've been about over 2 hours. No, this has been a great convo. I do want to say I appreciate you guys for joining us, all the regulars. Otter, it was great having you on tonight. I hope we can have you on some more streams in the future. I absolutely loved having you on.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was great. Great to finally actually see you on the stream, because I know we talk a lot on Twitter, and I always appreciate your input on stuff on Twitter. So I do want to real quick for anybody who's listening now, Otter, if you want to plug your Twitter and stuff again, real quick again.
Annoyed_Otter on Annoyed_Otter for Twitter and Gab, and Annoyed Minarchist Otter, all one word, on YouTube and BitChute.
Nice. And then
I will attempt to make some decent content as I learn what I'm doing there.
yeah, well, like for us, we're doing right now is live streams. We're working on some regular content, so don't feel bad. Amos, I know you have your own YouTube channel, so and like I've said before to other people, I've been on his channel before. It's always a great time. I've listened to a lot of his podcasts and live streams. So Amos, if you want to plug your stuff real quick, go ahead.
If you look up Shitlord Preachers, it's probably the only one you'll ever find on YouTube, but it is my YouTube channel, Amos Joseph. Shitlord Preachers is on. At least this coming week is on Monday. We're going to be moving it to Sundays at 11 o'clock Central Time. It's myself and Brooke Potter just talking about news of the week, culture. We kind of mix it up every now and then. We talked a little bit about our some dietary changes him and I were tinkering with, but
well, if you want to go into that real for a sec, we'll go for it.
Well, no, I'm not. No.
Oh, okay.
Don't have to go into that. We're not doing that on this.
No, it's fine.
So.
Okay, well, I do want to say real quick for everybody. I've been on Amos his live stream that he does, and with him and Brooke, it's a lot of fun. I've checked out all of his other ones that he's done with other people. We're hoping to get some more of our Sarcasm and Liberty guys onto his stream too for guests.
Yep. I've got Michael here, and of course, Liberty Ginger, Mike.
Mike, yeah.
I actually, by the way, just got in touch with what's her name? Mackenzie? Yeah, yes. I just got in touch with her just now.
She sent me a message about that. She was like, "Is it this guy?" Because I said something about.
Yeah. So we're trying to figure that out.
Yeah. So she's a great person.
Yeah, also the others, and then of course I've already reached out to Chris over at Think Liberty.
Mm-hmm. Chris is a good guy.
Yeah,
try to get a hold of Caitlin Cloven.
I'm already friends with her, so I reached out to her. Yeah. She literally lives an hour away from me. So.
Oh, nice. Yeah. No, she's a good person. I love Caitlin. She helps run Think Liberty, and we have a very good relationship with Think Liberty. So
going to be doing interviews with their team. Just
nice.
Kind of getting a lot of the people that I know.
Yeah. No, getting some good interviews with the Think Liberty people would be good because I do feel like they deserve some more on the individual basis, some more shout outs.
I will be appearing on Hapa Supremacy next month.
Nice.
They're actually having me on to talk about my diet.
Nice. No, that's Shane and Nico. For anybody who doesn't know, I've been on their stream before. There's some two of my favorite.
One other time before the end of the year, we're going to be talking about something else too.
Nice.
So
okay.
Getting out there, but we need subs.
Yes. For anybody who isn't already, follow Amos on Twitter. Follow their YouTube channel. What was your Shitlord Preachers? Is your YouTube
Just look up Shitlord Preachers. You'll find my channel.
Yeah.
And it's obvious you go there. You're also connected to Brooke's channel.
Mm-hmm.
Brooke has way more subscribers. He does a lot of different kind of content, but the main focus is to get Shitlord Preachers out there.
Yeah, check him out, guys, because Amos is a good friend. He's been really great to me. Definitely check him out on YouTube. Check him out on Twitter. There's no reason not to follow him. You'll enjoy his content. I've always had a lot of fun with it. And
hey, you could put it out there on Facebook too.
Oh yeah,
get your Facebook people.
Honestly, okay, Michael helps run the Facebook more than I do. I mostly handle the Twitter. So Michael, if you want to throw some out,
I'd say all of you guys just check him out if you want to.
Yeah.
Watch a stream or mostly the streams right now. I mean, I want to get back to videos.
Yeah. That's what we're trying to do too. So for those of you who don't know, Michael, he actually is one of our team members. He helps do memes and stuff for us and writes for us. So, Michael, real quick, if you want to give everybody your Twitter to follow.
Yep. My Twitter is @SleazyWee. That's Sleazy WEE. You'll see me on Facebook floating around. Michelangelo Leoncello is the name. Like he said, I work on Sarcasm and Liberty. So anything I make will end up on Sarcasm and Liberty at some point. So do all my
It's been a great part of our team too.
check-
Actually, he's been like a huge help for us.
Appreciate.
Yeah.
I'm a regular on the podcast, so I don't have my own YouTube and channel to plug right yet, but maybe that will change soon.
Yeah. Well, yeah. If you get one, let us know, man, because we'll definitely play it for you. And then Madness.
I gotta get all the equipment and shit.
Yeah.
Set,
Yeah. No, I know what that's like. It took me a while to get a mic and stuff for myself. So.
Yeah. I'll keep everyone in touch.
Definitely. Madness, he's a regular on our live streams. So Madness, if you want to give your Twitter account, even though you're currently banned, if you want to give us your Twitter real quick, just so everybody can follow you.
That's the Pure Madness one.
Pure Madness. Make sure you get the right spelling.
Yeah, it's Madness with 2 Ds.
2 Ds, that's right, because I fuck that up all the time. So
yeah, he never shuts up about that.
Or a double dose of pimpin'.
Yeah.
And
All
see,
right.
he's not going to shut up about this Twitter ban either.
Right. All right, guys. Well,
Period.
I'm gonna call it a night. I really appreciate everybody joining us. It was a lot of fun. I had a good time tonight. Hope everybody else did that joined us, and we'll see y'all next time. Bye.
Yep.
Good night.
Thanks.